Welcome, everybody, to the Great Colorado Podcast. I'm Bernard Douthit.
And I'm Tyler Drum.
Today, we're going to talk about the TikTok ban and what is going on there with 700,000 people now
Going over
on
to Red Note. Yeah.
this Chinese app that's in Mandarin.
So, for everyone who's been following, TikTok went dark around 9 o'clock last night, Colorado time. And it was a long 15 hours before, at least for me personally, before it turned back on at around 11. And I thought it was quite interesting that all of the credit that TikTok gave was to President Trump, even though he's not president yet until tomorrow. So I don't really know why they had to turn it off for 15 hours, but they did. And I think it was to send a message to see how upset people would be. And I don't know if Congress got the message, but at least in my circle, everyone was very upset that TikTok was down for 15 hours. I didn't even know what to do with myself last night before I went to bed because I'm so used to doing that TikTok scroll.
And the millennials are saying now, what are they saying? Because I think that's interesting.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are politically apathetic that thought about getting involved or going to a protest the first time because if they weren't going to have their TikTok, that was something that was going to get them out of bed and down to the state capitol to yell and scream. If anything could, that would be it.
The thing that I found interesting is that you said that they said they'd rather be on a Chinese app than download or use an app from Meta.
This
Facebook.
week, it went viral for everyone to download Red Note, or what is it, Zhao Hong, which is the Chinese name for it. It directly translates to Little Red Book, and it's been quite the experience going on Red Note this week. I created an account. I got my first 20 followers and posted a handful of videos of my pets. Nothing that would get me banned by the Chinese Communist Party. It was all very apolitical pet posts that I made. But yeah, 700,000 Americans. And what I saw on TikTok and on Red Note was people saying, I would rather learn Mandarin than download a Meta app. And I think they did just that. And I think Duolingo's Mandarin usage skyrocketed 20-fold because.
And the thing about this is, like we were talking earlier, that the U.S. government is worried about Chinese propaganda. Obviously, the Chinese mistreated the Uyghurs. They've done all sorts of awful stuff. I'm not a big fan of their surveillance capitalism. And how they exploit the population in a really totalitarian state, right? But when we think about the propaganda we have in the U.S., particularly from the healthcare industry and from, you name it, oil and gas, corporate America, I mean, it's almost like pick your poison. And I know that we might get some.
Well, I think with younger people, I mean, we're all so used to living in this digital age. I think we've all just accepted the fact that the government has our data. I don't think there's any millennials or Gen Z that are upset that China has access to your data through TikTok. I don't think that is anything. I mean, we're so used to the United States government having access to our data. I think we'd rather the Chinese have it than the US government, because what are they going to do with it? The US government can mess with our lives with the data. If the Chinese had all my data, where they're going to have some cute ferret videos, like, go for it. As long as it's not my social security number, there's other precautions that you have to take to make sure that your identity is secure online. I mean, we've just accepted that we live in a digital world and our data is no longer ours.
From what I've read and found out, there are some serious security issues with ByteDance being controlled or owned in China, and even though they haven't done anything yet, they could do something. But what just came into my mind was that Facebook basically, what did they sell, like 85, 90 million user accounts to Cambridge Analytica, and then the Trump campaign worked to push out propaganda that it was personalized propaganda to influence that election. What's that movie, The Great Hack? That's a great movie, by the way, about what happened in the 2016 election, and then also what Cambridge Analytica did to help Brexit get passed with propaganda, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, but I think that the risk with ByteDance is even less so, because this was all American companies that got away with it and seemingly little or no repercussions for those actions. I mean, China's being watched. I mean, they have the attention of the government, and if they were to try to pull something off, they would all freak out if they were pulling a Cambridge Analytica hack, or what, not even hack, just use of the data in that way. So I think we're even safer with the data with ByteDance because they're getting watched. I mean, people are concerned, people are keeping their eyes out. It's happening with American companies right under our eyes and no one seems to care. But the second you say China's doing it, then everyone's up in arms. And so I think if the Chinese did it, at least it would get the attention that it deserves if it happened.
Well, I think we do care that Google is surveilling us, and we're going to be on YouTube. So we love Google and we love YouTube. But a lot of people don't know one fun fact is that YouTube got busted for advertising to children without their parents' permission, and they actually got fined by the Federal Trade Commission. But it didn't really make the news. So there was that antitrust suit that was brought against them, and they're supposed to get broken up, but it seems like that's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
right. That. So we're gonna stop for a second, and then when we come back, we will show some of your ferret videos that are pretty.
Yeah,
funny.
We'll pull up Red Note.
All right. Yeah. So we'll be right back in a second.
Okay, we're back.
We're back,
and we're gonna just poke around Red Note a little bit and just share our thoughts. So it's interesting. The whole app is in Mandarin, and so they've added a little bit of English here or there to try to help the new users. But it's very interesting that people are rather navigating this app completely in Mandarin. But I also think what's really interesting about Red Note is that I think there's a cultural exchange happening between Americans and Chinese people that have never happened before. I mean, I think they have a preset idea of what it's like to be an American, and I think we have a very much equal idea of our preconceived notion of what it's like to be Chinese. That is not necessarily true. I mean, I've noticed just from a few days on Red Note how wealthy Chinese people seem to be, how they seem to have the same humor and the same TikTok like trends that they're doing. And I think this has done more than millions of dollars of cultural exchange like that facilitated between the two countries for us to get to know each other. So
do you want to show some? We're driving this from my phone.
I've been posting videos. I think of my
pretty funny.
My pets, and here's my husband. My husband playing with our ferret. It's so interesting how many Chinese people are commenting. And this one says, I've translated them. This one says, "Mama, watch out or say goodbye to your baby," like indicating they're gonna kidnap them. But
they're joking.
Yeah, obviously. But it's funny, and here's a video of my mother-in-law singing in Russian to my dachshund. Singing a song about how she's going to get abducted by wolves, which is what I learned when I was translating the song. But we also have my ferret jumping around. So I've posted nothing that would get me in trouble with the Chinese Communist government, which is something apparently you have to, they're very quick to ban. I also found it very interesting that their terms and services talk about things like don't show off your exorbitant wealth. So it's like, please be considerate of, your ability to consume and how that might not be consistent with the average Chinese person's ability to consume. And please, if it has like valuable information, then you can show it off. But if you're just showing off your wealth to show off your wealth, then that's a violation of terms of service.
So they don't have like a MTV Cribs kind of show where you're supposed to show off you can't show off your mansion or your Lamborghinis and stuff.
But if you just see, you can see right now that these are like some famous American TikTok creators are now on Red Note, and I find it very interesting that a lot of people are doing the Chinese and English subtitles, but all of the most of the video descriptions are in Mandarin. But yeah, it's just been here they keep calling us TikTok refugees. That's
what the Chinese are calling you.
Well, it goes both ways. It's just the term that they've used to describe the Americans there as refugees. And my husband joked because he's actually a Ukrainian refugee. He's like, I'm a double refugee now.
But you were telling me about this, that they're there's 700,000 people who've already signed up. for this.
700,000 Americans. have
And that
signed
the
up.
Chinese, that they were put into a giant group chat.
Yeah, so we're on your phone, so you can't see it, but like the features of RedNote, this is not the same as TikTok. It is it's kind of like a mix of TikTok and Instagram. You know, as you scroll through videos, it's very, oh, see, that one's not a good one because it's not a video. But you can see, you know, you scroll in the way that
You damn well know.
TikTok, but they also have these mass group. So every person, you can just click a button and everyone who follows you is suddenly into a group chat. So people, you know, people who are famous that have hundreds of thousands can just instantly create a group chat amongst all of their followers. Or it seems to that they created this group chat. I don't know how they did it, but all of the Americans, or a good chunk of them that joined, got put into this. It was like, I think it was like a 70,000 person American group chat, and we were all talking about how to navigate it and giving each other tips. So I thought, so it's not a one-to-one comparison. It seems to be like a Instagram, TikTok, and then also, you know, because they don't have access to like Wikipedia and that kind of thing in China, it seems like people use it to figure out, you know, their search, like what to eat in downtown Beijing, like good places to eat. They use it like we use Google or we use Wikipedia, because they have, you know, they don't have
They don't have those?
Yeah, those are banned. And so people will make like educational videos about, you know, the the boxing rebellion or something, and then people will use that as, you know, how we would use Wikipedia. So this seems to kind of be a catch-all for a bunch of different things that we use in America.
And you don't, there aren't messages, little promo messages from the Chinese government popping up?
Not that I've noticed.
No?
No.
But you can't make, could you search for Tiananmen Square on there?
No. That was made very clear that that's not something we're supposed to talk about.
Can I talk about that?
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's understandable. I mean, we're invading their app.
Their app?
Yeah, so I think I made a lot of my stuff on TikTok is a little more political. I made a point to just post what they call it. So they said, okay, there's videos that the Chinese people made. They say, okay, if you want to come join our app, you have to pay the cat tax, which is them saying that you have to post a video of your cat if you want to be accepted. And
It's
so
a cat tax?
cat tax, yeah.
It's a cat
And so
tax
I don't have a cat, so I paid my cat tax through videos of
your
of my dogs and my
ferrets.
ferrets, and a couple of
That's
my mice
funny.
as well. So yeah, it's just been a funny experience, and I think we've accomplished more cultural Chinese American exchange than the government could possibly ever hope to do. And I think, you know, I was getting Chinese people that were sending me messages of their ferrets, being like, "Hey, like look at these pictures of my ferrets. They seem to match yours," and just asking me questions about my life in America and about taking care of ferrets, and how I mean, they noticed through my videos that they don't live in a cage, and so they were asking me how I managed picking up all that ferret poop.
So how much time have you spent on this thing? This sounds like you're.
Oh, well, you know, TikTok got banned for 15 hours, so I spent 15 hours straight on RedNote, but I've actually enjoyed it, and I've probably used it a little more than I used TikTok this past week, just because it's, you know, it's more exciting, and I've been able to repost things that, you know, obviously have been posted on TikTok before, but I've had a lot of fun.
So if we search, if somebody wants to find it, it's RedNote. I don't know, we shouldn't really promote.
RedNote.
We'll
And then,
see.
yeah, the name in
But we
Chinese.
were talking about
Zhao Hongshu. So, and I did 4 days of Duolingo Chinese to help me better navigate the app. But it's just been a fun experience.
Well, I
I
mean,
think.
and if we're talking about surveillance and propaganda, the point that the millennials make is if they go on Meta, Facebook, that was a good rebranding, right? If they go on Facebook, they're going to get surveilled just as much.
Yeah,
And
and
it's-
they clearly would rather directly download the Chinese. I mean, Little Red Book is the name of the app, which is literally referring to like communism. Like there's no question that this is like a 150% Chinese app completely controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. And they say we would rather download that than anything Meta owns. So
Yeah, well, we're
It's
going to be
kinda funny.
back, so the audio might be a little different because I think we're going directly
Switching
on my
over.
phone. We're going to switch back and go back to Colorado politics, and we'll see you in just a minute. I might do some screen sharing of the
Hi, we're back.
We're back. Great Colorado podcast. Now we're going to be talking about what we've seen lately in the Colorado news about a few
Yeah.
members of the state legislature. And I'm just going to mention something that I've said before that people have heard me talk about is the Democrats in this state, they love to complain about Tabor. And I'm not a huge fan, but if you look at state revenue, it's gone up a lot, goes up every year because Tabor allows for, I think it's inflation plus population growth plus 1%. And, but anyway, I'm getting off topic, but there's another video about the budget deficit and how it's being driven up by Medicaid costs, which we want to provide healthcare to everybody. And we're still not really doing that completely, but Medicaid costs are going up and nobody's figured out a way to reduce them. And there's a separate video I made about that and how crazy profitable, incredibly profitable Colorado hospitals are. If you want to learn more about that, you can go on that video. We'll include a link for that here. But today, what we're going to jump into is a couple of news stories we found this morning about some members of the Colorado legislature. Oh, and back to my point about Tabor. Democrats love to complain about Tabor, which is the taxpayer bill of rights, which limits spending. But Colorado voters have consistently, I think at least 5 times, maybe more than that, voted down tax increases. In some cases, they've been because our governor, who claims he's a Democrat, is really against increasing taxes to pay for education. But I contend that part of the problem is that people just don't trust our state legislature because they've had some ethical problems, including, I forget the Republican that was tried to take the gun through DIA. That's been a while. That was a while ago.
Oh, I can't remember. Yeah.
But
I mean,
they
I think
went
you
through,
just gotta
literally
stop
went to
there.
DIA and had a gun on them.
Well, and I know there's a few of them that carry on the Senate floor.
At the
House floor.
Capitol, they
Yeah.
didn't carry on the, oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in here, do a little low tech here. We don't fancy editing. Where did if we go to, I'm going to share our screen and go to, okay.
Oh, here, this one's
This,
Senator Lewis. So this has been a big talk around, the younger generation working in Colorado politics. I know quite a few people who have either worked for Senator Lewis or know people who have. And apparently, word on the street is that she is one of the worst bosses in the state legislature. This news story, which comes on the heels of, multiple other years of similar coverage, says that she was having her aides do lawn work around her house, and she made them tend bar at her personal party. And these aides are paid by the state legislature. So it's not like it's her money. It's public money being paid to assist her in her duties in the state legislature. And she's using that money to have her yard cleaned up.
So really, so she was, yeah. So they're on the state payroll. And
they're on the state
doing
payroll.
things
They're
directly for
using
her.
them for her own personal chores. And apparently this is like her fourth round of aides that she's had work for her, because she's just demeaning, an awful boss, not a fun person to work with. And so it looks like the state legislature has banned her from having the privilege of having state paid for legislative aides. I think in theory there's a loophole where she could pay for them out of her campaign funds.
Or campaign funds.
Yeah, if she wanted to still have them, but she is not allowed to have a state paid for aid. And it's sad to see this, because I think that the Democrats are supposed to hold ourselves to higher standards. I mean, we see all the crazy stuff that the Republicans are doing, but I have a higher standard that I would hope that our Democratic state legislature and just Democratic politicians in general should be held to. And she is clearly not meeting that standard.
We could reach out to her, see if she wants to come on the show.
Yeah, we can see if she wants to
she's probably
defend her
be fair,
actions. Yeah.
just be fair and maybe have even, get both sides of the story. And then what's the other one? Oh, so then, and she's from what, Longmont?
Yeah. Senator Lewis is from Longmont.
Now it seems like maybe I don't want to pick on the north side of the metro area, but it seems like politicians on the north side of the metro area have a problem. Not to get into the weeds, but I know Westminster had a problem where they were overcharging Westminster residents for water, and there's a recall election. We have a little bit of dog barking going on here. Hopefully it's not too loud. But the other thing we wanted to talk about is Senator Faith Winter, who is what I think Westminster was going to file an ethics complaint against her when Northglenn already has, because she showed up
Yeah, so
drunk
she's
to a
been,
meeting.
it sounds like she has some addiction issues and some alcohol related issues. I've noticed for a while that she seems to ride her bike everywhere, so maybe that is related to this. But she showed up to a forum, a town hall forum, where she was drunk and, slurring her speech, and it was pretty evident. It looks like they kind of ushered her out once the other members of the state legislature or the other elected officials with her realized how drunk she was. And I think it's kind of hard to see that because part of the culture in the state legislature has always been around alcohol. I mean, a lot of the state legislatures, and I think it's getting better in recent years, but when I worked there, which was in 2013, a lot of state legislators legislators would go and drink at lunch. They would have a 2-hour lunch break, and a lot of them would go out and have a few drinks for lunch. A lot of them, they're working sometimes till 3 a.m.
They lunch during the week. They'd be drinking.
They'd be drinking during lunch.
Hmm.
And that was kind of just the culture at the Capitol. And when they were late for bills, they would stay until sometimes 3 a.m. And there was a certain time where the drinks came out. I think they're pretty.
Do they serve drinks in the state capitol?
Well, they don't blatantly drink alcohol on the House floor, but they do a lot of times have drinks in their offices. And there has been more than one occasion where I know of that drinks have been on the floor, just not in their original containers. But so I think that the culture around working at the state capitol has probably made it easy for her to hide this drinking problem for a while. And I know that she didn't run for re-election this year, and she's no longer.
She's termed out.
Yeah, she's termed out. So hopefully she is recovering in her retirement, and I hope that things are going better for her. But she's far from the only one to get in alcohol related issues. I mean, there was the DUI that like a block from the Capitol where there were like 5 different state representatives in the car, and there was we didn't.
When was this?
Like probably 6 years ago. There was like some lobbyists. It was a Democratic state rep that was driving, and then there was the one who picked his kids up drunk from
Matt Gray.
Yeah, Matt Gray.
Well, he. I mean, it was so bad that he picked his kids up, and I think somebody from the daycare center called the cops. Right. I mean,
so
stuff.
there seems to be a history of alcohol abuse at the state legislature, and my feeling, I'm not at the state legislature at a day-to-day basis anymore, but I feel like it's getting better. I feel like these things are getting called out, and that hopefully they're improving. But I know that alcohol is a big problem at the Capitol.
Well, I mean, don't want to pick on people, but at the same time, if you're going to be a public official, you should be, it's
held accountable.
Yeah. You're that's kind of the deal. If you're a private citizen, you show up inebriated for a party that's private, but this is a public situation. So I'm going to turn off the screen share, and then we're going to talk. Last thing we're going to talk about is the Park Hill Golf Course. We got some great news about that.
So if you know anything about either of us, you probably know that we were really big fans of the Save Our Open Space, the campaign to keep the Park Hill Golf Course undeveloped. And it goes back 2 different ballot measures. What was it, like 2 years ago? We had the most recent ballot measure where we voted to keep the conservation easement in effect and make it so that Westside Investment Partners was unable to develop the land. And even before that, I think 4 years before that, we had a previous ballot measure.
Well, and I should mention in another video that we're going to be releasing soon, I get into what I call astroturf names of organizations and sort of the propaganda that often goes into these things and what Westside did. So just real quick, Westside bought this property in 2019 when Michael Hancock was mayor, not a very good mayor. They donated to his campaign. they bought the golf course, 155 acres for $24 million, which is about 10%
Pennies on the dollar for what you would buy. But the reason that they got it so cheap is because it was under a conservation easement where you weren't allowed to legally develop onto the land. It could only be golf course open space use. But they thought that, oh, maybe we could spend a few $1 million on the city council and mayoral races and we could change that.
Get a deal done. And they didn't. And then there's a video where I talk about the fake organization they created called Empower Northeast Denver that was supposed to look like it was grassroots, but really wasn't. And it went to voters twice. And I think in this last time, it was 2023, they outspent the grassroots organization.
Save Our Open Spaces.
10-1.
Yeah.
And they also, when my son even got convinced, a lot of people did, that, oh, well, these are just a bunch of NIMBYs who don't want, more housing in their area, more traffic. Why don't we do this?
Well, and I think what it really is people didn't want, Denver's getting developed so much that we had, promised to set this land aside for a perpetual conservation easement so that we had some trees and some open space left in the city. And that was getting, thrown away and handed over to a developer who they were doing, the bare minimum to appear that they were, the good developers. We're going to set aside a certain percentage for low income, they're going to let Habitat for Humanity build 7 houses on it. But, I wasn't bought over by those.
Well, and then the story came out about, it was just like, like a Donald Trump real estate organization. They were sued by, I think, Catholic nuns.
Yeah. Sisters of Charity, so basically they had this clubhouse at the Park Hill Golf Course that they had promised this Black women's religious organization that they would be able to use for their charitable efforts. And these women put in, hundreds of thousands of dollars of improvements into the building, and then they kicked them out. And we're trying to absorb the profit for all the improvements they did to this building, and not have, so they basically scam these women into improving the building and then kicking them out.
Well, it's a happy ending though, that their attempt to repeal the conservation easement, which would have allowed them to develop the property really however they wanted, because after the vote, they could just, nobody's really paying attention. That failed. And then, so the park is now back in.
So they threw a fit in the immediate interim of losing the vote, and they put up a fence all around it. Within 30 days of them losing the vote, they fenced the area in so that people couldn't use it like a park like they had been doing. And they had all these signs saying, oh, we're going to trespass you if you walk on our land.
And then they were threatening to open a Top Golf, which seemed ridiculous.
Which was not at all going to happen. It was just trying to scare. Well, I think they did that in the immediate before the vote to be like, oh, if you don't pass this, then we're going to open up a Top Golf and we're going to create a mess. They just said whatever they could to scare the community into trying to vote in favor of the easement.
But the news we got this week is that the city is officially going to. I think there's still needs to be voted.
I think there's still some I's to dot and some T's to cross, but it looks like the deal has come through where they're going to trade the 155 acres at Park Hill Golf Course for 145 acres near the airport of undeveloped land. Now it seems like it has to pass city council, but I think it's more of a rubber stamping at this point, because on the surface, at least from what the little research we've done, it seems to be a good deal. It seems to be. This other land also seems to be land that you're not allowed to develop on. So they're going to have to jump through some hoops with, it looks like, Adams County to change that and make it so they can develop on. But on the surface, the land is worth only half of the value of.
Well, that's what they're saying it's worth.
Yeah.
And 9 News had a report on this with some real estate experts. But I did some quick math, and it amounts to something like, you could fit, in rough terms, 1,000 city lots, and average city lots in the older parts of Denver, Park Hill, are 6,000 250 square feet, and it could fit 1,000 of those. Obviously, not that many, because you need to take out 30%, maybe even more than that, for roads and other things. But my calculations were that if they even just got it zoned and turned it into lots, they could sell, that'd be worth $100 million. And so what they're saying is that the news reports are saying that the land they're getting is worth half of what they paid for the Park Hill Golf Course. They paid 24 million. So they're saying what they're getting is 12 or 13 million, and it could be worth 100 million.
So either it's going to be a great deal if they can get it rezoned like they couldn't do last time they tried, or it could turn out to be a fantastic opportunity for Andy Klein and his friends at Westside Investment Partners. So hoping them the best.
we're going to be coming back to that if anything happens.
We will follow it closely.
So that, I think, wraps up our episode on this very cold January day. And we will see you soon.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Take care.